No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live episode number 104. Subscribe. That's all I ask of you, for now anyway. And you will keep this independent media venture in business. But breaking right now, the petition is hurtling to 3 million. But the MSM either want to ignore it or deride it, not realising that Slippery Starmer's lies are what makes this government illegitimate in the eyes of the great British public. And boy, this guy has a track record.
2019 Labour commitments to nationalise water, energy, rail, the Royal Mail, they'll all be in Labour's next election manifesto.
I've made that commitment.
Will you nationalise the big six energy companies, yes or no?
No.
No, you will not.
By the Home Secretary was the wrong decision, and I think it was a rushed decision.
In 2019, you said stripping her of her British citizenship was the wrong decision. She's lost her appeal to regain it. Should she be allowed to appeal again? Should she be allowed back here in order to face justice in the UK?
I think the court decision yesterday is the right decision.
In my digest next, I'll reveal why Alex Phillips is lashing out at Woke ITV for its attempt to drag Nigel Farage in its derogatory coverage of the petition. Then my superstar panel weigh-in, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Russell Quirke, the host of the brilliant Straight Talk on YouTube, and the independent journalist Charlie Bentley Astor, who can be found on Substack. Also coming up on the show today, I'll expose the sick persecution of Tory councillor Raymond Connolly, whose wife Lucy is one of Britain's political prisoners locked up for a tweet. The final nail in the coffin of Strictly Come Dancing, as Craig Revel Horwood reveals he is now a nice judge to avoid being cancelled. And it's Ed Sheeran versus Bob Geldof in an explosive woke row about Band-Aid 40 years after the release of Do They Know It's Christmas. Then in the uncancelled after show, wow, the royal family have actually gone and banned Meghan Markle from their Christmas celebrations, all the latest with our royal mastermind Angela Levin. The uncancelled after show now broadcast exclusively daily and on demand via my Substack, which you can get to right now by visiting www.outspoken.live. A monthly membership gets you access to the after show every single weekday, my exclusive reporting, the columns, access to our live chats on Substack. It really is a thriving community. And the great news is, as of yesterday, we're running our biggest ever sale for Black Friday, 30% off. So it's never been cheaper or hopefully more realistic to be able to support Outspoken. I'm incredibly grateful, but I do understand how tough times are. So of course you can sign up as a free subscriber as well. And I truly do appreciate it. But now let's go. The petition to end all petitions has galvanised the overlooked Brits who are fed up with not being represented as our country burns to the ground, metaphorically at least for now. And I think this is the beginning of a political awakening here in the UK. A bit like, do you remember when the Tea Party came to fruition in the US and that eventually resulted in the presidency of Donald Trump? So, of course, the crooked and corrupt mainstream media have either ignored the petition altogether or treated it with derision. Sort of the way they talk about Brexit voters, those who refuse the COVID jab, or folk who believe in free speech online. As Stephen Barrett wrote on X, it doesn't matter if they cover it or not, we see. Sly News at least did find the publican, Michael Westwood, who started this historic populist revolt.
I did it basically to try and give the people a bit of a voice and express how, in my opinion, the general public are feeling at the moment about the way the situation is.
They've got a mandate, though, haven't they? I mean, they swept the board, really.
They have swept the board, but the promises before they come in was that they had all the figures figured out and wasn't going to touch people's taxes. And what they've done is the complete opposite, in my opinion.
But do you not think that when people voted on the 4th of July, what they were doing was giving the Labour Party, now the Labour government, a full 5 years to be able to do what they were promising?
Yeah, I do agree to that. but what they promised and what they're delivering is, in my opinion, is a different thing altogether.
And of course it is. They haven't promised anything, they delivered, Kay Burley. So of course yesterday, the cretins at Woke ITV with Slippery Starmer literally on their sofa decided to use the petition to make a point about Nigel Farage's apparent unpopularity, rather than the historic lows this hated Prime Minister has slumped to.
But are you now feeling the pressure? Because I think there's a petition that's currently
Your approval
online
ratings have dropped.
1.9 people who want the election to go again.
It's now
Is
over
it 2 million now?
It's now just over 2 million.
Do you feel the pressure?
Look, I remind myself that very many people didn't vote Labour at the last election. I'm not surprised that many of them want a rerun. That isn't how our system works. There will be plenty of people who didn't want us in the first place. So look, what I focus on is the decisions that I have to make every day. And it's a bit like opposition.
Surely you want us, the public, to trust you, to like you, to think he's the man for the job, he's doing what he needs to do. Your approval rating is lower than Nigel Farage's right now, which even saying it to the Prime Minister of the country I live in, that I pay tax in, to say your approval rate is lower than Nigel Farage, that's disappointing. Whoever I support.
The thing is, if you make your mind up, as I have done, that we're going to do the difficult things first, then I think it's inevitable that people do feel they're difficult decisions. I mean, I understand that.
What the hell is Andy Peters on? Maybe he should go back to the competitions. Nigel Farage is literally the most popular politician in the country. That isn't an opinion. It's backed up by multiple opinion polls. As Farage ally, Alex Phillips, a good friend of this show, posted on X. And what exactly are you trying to make of this, Andy Peters? The approval ratings of Nigel Farage are the highest of all UK political leaders. Your snide, snaring discomfort at this is so 2016. Get with the programme. But they won't. They won't get with the programme, Alex, which is why they're horrified that a great like Michael Caine weighed in to back the petition. Can you believe that? And let's just be clear, there are too many reasons to list as to why folks should hate Two-Tier Care, who is literally destroying our country in front of our very eyes. There's the creation of political prisoners like Tommy Robinson and the destruction of free speech, as embarrassingly highlighted on a constant basis by Elon Musk on X. There's the illegal invasion of our country via the southern border, which means that even our protected swans, can you believe this? Our protected swans no longer safe from the hands of illegals, as we saw from this scene in Winsford Marina in Cheshire. Then there's the suicides of farmers.
Crossing over to it later, you don't want to miss this one.
Yesterday on the show, our reporter Anna Riley spoke to the Reverend Caroline Cornerstone at Selby Livestock Market, and this is part of the fascinating interview which took us all by surprise. Listen to what the Reverend had to say.
We are helping families cope with suicides of farmers.
Yeah. 5 suicides in the last 10 to 12 days. It's hard, it's tough, but that's what my function is here as the chaplain to the market.
That's an extraordinary figure. 5
in the last 10 days.
Yeah, amazing.
That is quite frightening, isn't it?
There's also the lies about the non-existent climate emergency that is going to plunge us into bankruptcy thanks to that complete madman, Ed Miliband. But nothing comes close to Starmer's lies. I'm going to make a very bold statement here, but I completely believe it. Keir Starmer is the biggest liar in Britain. He is an even bigger liar than James O'Brien or Carol Vorderman. Here is the proof.
I want to pay tribute to Jeremy Corbyn, who's a friend as well as a colleague.
You wouldn't call Jeremy Corbyn a friend?
No.
We have to make the case for freedom of movement.
We don't want open borders. Freedom of movement has gone and it's not coming back.
Cutting off power, cutting off water, secure?
Well, I think that Israel does have that right. I was not saying that Israel had the right to cut off water, food, fuel or medicine. Wounded by the media. The Sun in this city, a hurt for this city. And I certainly won't be giving any interviews to The Sun during the course of this campaign.
Did you write an article for some newspaper the other day? Surely that's not going to gain you any support across the Northwest.
Would you write for them again, Sir Keir?
I would do, yeah.
Can you guarantee that under your leadership, the 2019 Labour commitments to nationalise water, energy, rail, the Royal Mail, they'll all be in Labour's next election manifesto?
I've made that commitment.
Will you nationalise the big six energy companies, yes or no?
No.
No, you will not.
By the Home Secretary was the wrong decision, and I think it was a rushed decision.
In 2019, you said stripping her of her British citizenship was the wrong decision. She's lost her appeal to regain it. Should she be allowed to appeal again? Should she be allowed back here in order to face justice in the UK?
I think the court decision yesterday is the right decision. The Labour Party in opposition needs to be the Labour Party in power, and a government doesn't go on picket lines. A government tries to resolve disputes. I'm really pleased to be here this morning supporting the staff at McDonald's who are on strike. Air quality, climate change is the issue of our time, and as the Extinction Rebellion protest showed us this week, the next generation are not going to forgive us if we don't take action. I think they're wrong. I think their action is wrong.
You have to choose now between Davos or Westminster.
Davos.
Why?
Because Westminster is too constrained, and you know it's closed, and we're not having meaning. Once you get out of Westminster, whether it's Davos or anywhere else, you actually engage with people.
Any prime minister who lies more than he tells the truth and admits that he prefers Davos to Westminster is not fit to govern our once great United Kingdom. And that's what the petition is going to show the world. And now, my superstar panel. And I'm absolutely delighted today to welcome back Russell Quirke, who is the host of Straight Talk on YouTube, and Charlie Bentley Astor, the independent journalist who can be found alongside me on Substack. It's where you've got to go these days to get your unfiltered news that the mainstream media doesn't provide you. So, Russell, the petition, are you surprised that the mainstream media are either ignoring it or trying to deride it?
No, because of course the majority of the mainstream media are left-leaning and support Keir Starmer, as hapless as he is. It's funny though, isn't it? The petition for a second Brexit referendum was lauded and promoted almost by the mainstream media back in 2016, 17, 18. So yes, as ever, a bit like Keir Starmer, the mainstream media, Dan, are kind of talking out both sides of their mouths. A lot of people, of course, as commentators have said, look, what's the point of this? You can't force a general election. And look, no one's an idiot here. We all know that that is the case. But I think this is a message that the people of Britain are sending. And I think it's a message that, I mean, certainly Keir Starmer won't respond to. I don't think that he will give it any regard. And in fact, when he went on to, I mean, the politically challenging forum, of course, that is Andy Peters on this morning yesterday. It kind of went over his head, and in a very kind of psychotic kind of way, in my opinion. He just kind of dismissed it, and he had no real conscience about it. But I think those that will think that this is a bit of an issue will particularly be Labour staffers and indeed Labour backbench MPs, particularly those that, even though they won in the general election of July, didn't win with huge majorities. And they're now going to start seeing by-election seats tumble. We're already seeing that. And it won't be long before, over the next year or two, those backbenchers that are worried about their 90k a year and their expenses and their palatial offices and all the trappings of Westminster, they'll start to be very, very concerned, I think, about working for and being associated with undoubtedly the most unpopular prime minister that Britain has ever seen.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I was speaking to someone the other day, a big Conservative Party donor actually, who said that they predict, and obviously some people say this is hyperbole, and we don't want to get to this situation, but they predict that Keir Starmer will be the first prime minister airlifted out of Downing Street for his own safety. Now, Charlie, I saw, great to have you on the show, by the way. Thank you so much for being here for the first time. And I
Good to
saw
be here.
during the digest when Andy Peters made that comment about Nigel Farage being unpopular. You were so shocked.
Yeah, well, I want to debunk the Labour majority because actually, if you look at the statistics, for a party vote share wise who has won a general election, there has never been a more unpopular party. I think Labour got something like 33%. Well, the smallest majority for a winning party in history is 34. So actually the worst performing winning party in history. And that's being borne out in this petition.
Indeed, indeed. And isn't it shocking, though, Charlie, that there are mainstream media figures who, as Alex Phillips says, are sort of living like it's 2016 because their job, once they sign up to work for an Ofcom regulated public service broadcaster, is meant to be to represent the people. Yet they talk about Nigel Farage as if he's some sort of fringe figure who is hated by the population, rather than actually someone who a lot of political strategists and even the bookies now think has a strong chance of being the next Prime Minister of the UK.
Exactly. They underestimate him at their peril, as the last election showed. You know, if we had proportional representation, Reform would be the third largest party in Parliament, rather than the Lib Dems. And so, yeah, the underestimation is what the establishment have got to watch out for. The mainstream media not covering this or sort of thinking it's a kind of the right-wing pundits who are sort of coming out and go, oh, you guys are hypocrites because, you know, you saying there's not going to be another referendum, but you want another election. And it's like, no, that's like Russell said, everyone knows we're not having another election. But it's about sending a message, to quote the Joker from Batman. Yeah. It's about sending a message. And I'll leave it at that.
Well, the thing is, he can keep laughing us off, Russell, for as long as he wants, can't he? But at the end of the day, as you point out, eventually the pressure on Starmer will come from his own party.
It will, and actually, I mean, I can't obviously speak on behalf of Nigel Farage, but I should think that his superpower now, Nigel Farage, apart from his oratory skills, which of course are well documented, his superpower will be to be underestimated. Dan. I suspect Nigel Farage wants to be underestimated, but you know, you've only got to look at what is already happening in terms of Reform's polling figures, how they're performing in by-elections. That's only going to get better and better, I suspect, for Reform. Because the other ingredient here, of course, is the fact that, look, we now have a new Conservative leader in Kemi Badenoch, who, look, I wasn't violently opposed to, if you like. I thought she was certainly going to be better than a Tom Tugendhat or a Mel Stride, frankly.
Not hard.
But not hard, low bar. But I'm afraid Kemi, I think, and I saw her speak at the farmers' protest last week. She was on stage, and I've found Kemi so far, and I know she's only 2 or 3 weeks in, very, very uninspiring. I think
she's been awful.
She's had a very weak start. So what does that translate to in terms of Conservative voters, Conservative members, Conservative councillors? I think that we're going to see another 3 or 4 years of lacklustre non-conservatism from the Conservatives. We're going to see defections, and all it's doing is playing into the hands of Nigel Farage and Reform.
Indeed, because
it's going to be a huge upset in 4 years' time. A huge upset.
Yeah, I think so. I honestly think so. Because the thing is, Charlie, Kemi Badenoch had a chance to do things differently. In fact, she wants to do things in the same way. And that just ain't going to fly. It's not going to fly. That's why I backed Robert Jenrick. So what do you think of her performance so far?
Well, for a start, I don't think we're going to make it to 4 years in. I think we'll probably get 3.5 before things are bad enough that another election is sort of demanded on this kind of scale that we're seeing at the moment, but in earnest.
It just keep ticking up. It just keeps ticking up.
It's 2,000 a minute sometimes, which is quite something.
It's extraordinary.
Yes, Kemi wouldn't have got into power if she wasn't pulling the party line. Obviously, she's come out and said that a woman is an adult human female sometimes, and that's apparently all you need to do now to be considered, slightly conservative in this country. So, yeah, the prospects aren't good for the Conservative Party at the moment.
No, they are definitely not. They are definitely not. And it's so interesting. I feel like the petition has united the country in the same way that the queue for the late Queen united the company. There are some things that are just so purely and beautifully British. And rather than rioting, rather than protesting, rather than getting out on the streets, we're showing our absolute frustration with this petition. But as I said yesterday, the message has to be, this is just the start. Don't sign this petition and then move on. Sign this petition and start your engagement in this political process, because we have to save our country. We can see what's happening to our country. It's heartbreaking. It's horrifying. It could lead to deaths of your family members. We know all of that. And that's why this battle is so important. Breaking right now, the councillor husband of the convicted criminal for a ex-post, Lucy Connelly, is now being persecuted with the type of lawfare used against a politician like Donald Trump simply because he supported his own wife. I'm completely disgusted about this. You know, I have been in touch with Raymond throughout this whole process. He is a very well-respected local councillor who sits on many of the committees for the two areas that he represents. His wife made a mistake. They suffered family tragedy, which meant the Southport massacre and the slaying of those 3 young girls hit her very, very hard. I won't give you the full background here, but they lost a child because of NHS failure. She made one tweet and she is behind bars for 30 months. It's disgusting. But that is Lucy Connelly, not Raymond Connolly, a very popular local politician who has been reselected to fight his seat for the Conservative Party next year. So now what do the despicable mainstream media do? Try and drive him out of his job. So let me take you through this story from the NN Journal that reports the councillor husband of convicted racist Lucy Connelly is under a code of conduct investigation by West North Hampshire Council for comments he made in defence of his wife. The authorities' monitoring officer, Sarah Hall, has instructed an independent investigator from the law firm Bevan Britton to decide whether Councillor Ray Connolly has breached the code of conduct for public comments he made in the aftermath of his wife's arrest for stirring up racial hatred online. So they now want to publish Raymond for what he said about his wife. So what did he say about his wife? What did he say about the woman that he loved, who he had watched go through unbearable tragedy when they lost their child because of NHS failure, who was simply pointing out her horror, the horror that we all shared, actually, in an artful manner, I will give you that, after the Southport massacre? Well, it was an interview with Sly News where I believe Raymond Connolly was dignified, brave, and didn't say anything that should see this sham investigation. And let me tell you, by the way, you need some background to this interview. Raymond had just found out that his wife had pled guilty and she was locked up. She was remanded in custody. She is still locked up. But I just want to show you the interview here.
These last few months have been quite traumatic for Lucy and the children. The stuff I hear on the TV is not really Lucy. She's probably the opposite of what she's having to admit to, but she knows that she's overstepped the mark and there's consequences for it. So hopefully she'll be able to learn from this and move on with her life.
So what has she said about it to you now, reflecting on obviously what happened and what she did?
It's just a moment of, an upset housewife, really. Just seeing children in the reports with all the misinformation, and just got dragged into it. And obviously she regrets bit. She did.
What the hell did Raymond Connolly just say then that is making him the target of this investigation? Which, by the way, is run, quite ironically, by the authority's Standards and Democracy Committee. Remember, this guy is a very popular, democratically elected politician, and the committee, if they decide he is in breach of the code, could actually remove him from committees and also order him to offer a full apology to the council. So Charlie Bentley Astor, I am completely outraged by this. I mean, I don't believe that Lucy Connelly should be behind bars for her ex-post in the first place. But why the hell is the West Northamptonshire Council now coming after her husband?
Well, the establishment has to show that it's completely intolerant of intolerance. And so no one can get away scot-free. If you're appearing to apologise in any capacity for anyone that's been charged with these things, then you're just as bad as them. You're complicit, and therefore you're perpetuating the systemic racism in this country, which is absolute nonsense. You know, the whole reason free speech is so important is because if people aren't able to say the things they wish they could otherwise do when they're very angry, they go out and do it. And so, you know, that's what the riots were. People were unable to articulate themselves in any other way than being extremely violent, you know. And I've had to say before that I'm very blessed that I'm able to speak and have something of a platform, because if I didn't, I'd really struggle. And so I don't think anyone can truly look down upon this woman, particularly if she's repentant of what she's said. And certainly no one should be going after her husband for standing by his wife, which any man absolutely should be doing.
But he said that she regretted it. He said that she was a housewife who was deeply upset. I mean, Russell Quirke, I mean, let's just put aside the fact, by the way, for 1 minute, that Lucy Connelly is behind bars for 30 months. It makes me feel sick. She has a 12-year-old daughter. They lost a child. I mean, that makes me sick in the first place. But was there anything that Raymond Connolly said that you think makes it inappropriate for him to continue in his role as a councillor for the Conservative Party?
Absolutely not. So obviously, look, we've seen that particular footage. I don't know if he was interviewed anywhere else, or indeed
no, he wasn't.
Set out tweets. What one narrative I did see that he simply said online somewhere that his wife is not a racist, and I think to show remorse as he has done on her behalf is the right thing to do. I mean, obviously the tweet that she put out was ill-advised. It was distasteful. I agree with you though, Dan. I think that, you know, to remonstrate and actually to call for mass deportations. Now, I would argue that calling for mass deportations, a bit like Donald Trump, the 47th elected president of the United States, is doing right now, is neither racist nor an offence. Now, I know she said some other things that were distasteful, but I can't see anything that Councillor Ray Connolly has said in defence of his wife and in showing remorse that is inappropriate or distasteful. But let me tell you, I know something about the standards process in local authorities because I was a councillor for 8 years in Brentwood Council, and it probably won't surprise you to learn that I had multiple complaints levied against me. Through
You, Russell, never.
Yeah, but you know why? And I think only ever one was upheld, which was a kangaroo court type thing. And look, I'll spare you the details, but I'll tell you exactly what the standards process is within local authorities. It is a politically weaponized process only. So what happens is you get opponents, either members of the public or normally other councillors on the other side of the chamber, your political opponents, that introduce and levy all sorts of ridiculous complaints against you because of what they thought you said or what they think you meant. And actually then the council to a degree is bound to look at that complaint. But what the council should be doing, if there is no case to answer at kind of face value, they should throw the the aggrieved complaint out immediately. So the fact now that Ray Connolly, apart from losing a child and now having his wife in prison for 31 months, has got to go through the indignity and the stress of a very, very public process. And frankly, whoever the people are that have levied these complaints against them are, in my opinion, vile and disgusting individuals.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, has the man not suffered enough? And let's just remember, he has committed no crime whatsoever. His only crime is standing by the woman who he loves. And I think that makes him a very honourable man, actually. But Charlie Bentley Astor, of course, there is a bigger point here when it comes to the Southport massacre and the cover-up over the Southport massacre, which is that one of the reasons why there was so much anger from people like Lucy Connelly is that we knew that the authorities were not telling us the full story. We knew that the authorities were not telling us everything they knew. And we know now that they are still not telling us everything. Now, I know you're doing a lot of work on this. How, what can you tell us?
I mean, they almost certainly would have known about the ricin and the Al-Qaeda manual from day one, if, at a push, a couple of days. But, we've seen the police were at the Rudy Cabana's house, closing it all off and putting up forensic tents by 5 o'clock that day. So, was he known to the authorities beforehand? If he's had stuff like that in his possession, it would be highly illogical to not have him on their radar. And more to the point, if that he wasn't in fact on their radar, why? And I think it's not simply who he is and his background and the type of crime that makes the authorities want to clamp down upon this. It's the fact that there's almost certainly failures on several different levels going right up to the top that need covering up as well.
I know. And Nigel Farage says that he hears they're trying to push back Rudy Cabana's trial. Russell Quirke, it all seems designed to stop us having conversations. And that's where I believe the sentence of Lucy Connelly is so sinister and so chilling, because actually it is to send a message, isn't it? Once the trial is over, shut up. Don't say anything. That's how they want us to feel. Because if you do, we might just lock you up.
And at the same time, of course, we've got the Manchester airport thugs. We're now 160 days on from that particular incident. We're 3 months on from Greater Manchester Police actually submitting a file to the Crown Prosecution Service. So the CPS have had that file on the Manchester airport thugs, those thugs that we saw assaulting police officers. There's absolutely no excuse under any circumstances for that, in my opinion. So that also is being delayed. There's obviously political influence here. And I suspect, look, to use another parallel, is this seems to me to be akin to what happened with the Rochdale grooming gangs. Now, some people might think I'm being alarmist here. I'm not. The Rochdale grooming gangs and actually Pakistani grooming gangs across Britain, all of that was covered up, delayed. And in the end, the police admitted that they were not prepared to investigate and prosecute many of the perpetrators of sexual assaults against young white girls, simply because they were scared of racial tension, there being community retribution. I mean, if there isn't an example there or an absolute demonstration of abject two-tier policing in our society, given the likes of Lucy Connelly and others going to prison and being actually pressured to plead guilty for racial crimes because otherwise they're threatened with being incarcerated on remand for months and months and months that would actually then exceed their ultimate sentence. I mean, that is why these people are being seen as being guilty of race crimes, is because they were put under pressure to plead guilty. But by contrast, people that punch police officers and, murder 3 little girls seem to be treated demonstrably in a very, very different and soft-handed way altogether.
Very good point. Very good point. It's very disturbing. And of course, we will keep pushing for the truth. I've done as much as I can within the bounds of the laws, certainly much more than the mainstream media. But just trust me, there is much, much more on this story to come. Now, Strictly Come Dancing. It used to be one of those television pleasures, didn't it? And one of the reasons was watching Craig Revel-Horwood tear to pieces the dancers and the celebrities who were a bit useless. And that was fine. I've had friends of mine go on that show. John Sargent, Anne Widdecombe. They were terrible. And you wanted them to be slammed for it. But not anymore, because the country has gone so woke, the mainstream media has gone so woke, the British Bashing Corporation has gone so woke that Craig Revel-Horwood, the original Queen of Mean, has now admitted that he has to be a little pussycat. Look at the Sun front page. Revel without a cause. Strictly's Craig Revel-Horwood, this is according to The Sun, has admitted canning his catty comments towards celebrity dancers over fears he will be cancelled. The judge of 20 years gave a rare 10 score on Saturday and says he has toned down his Mr. Nasty act following the Giovanni Pernice bullying scandal. And this is what Craig had to say about it. I have changed my style of judging. I was really harsh 20 years ago. When I look back, I thought, oh, that's cutting. I do still say what's wrong, but can wrap the truth in a nice way. I'm thinking more like a teacher than a judge. How boring. We don't want him to be a teacher. I loved those old comments. Do you remember when he told Jeremy Vine that he danced like a stork that had been struck by lightning? Or told the former Home Secretary, Jackie Smith, that she limped about like she was lost at a party somewhere drunk? Or even, do you remember when, he's now his fellow judge, but when he told Anton Dubik that he was wearing awful fake teeth before realising they were actually Anton Dubik's own teeth. And look, you can look at this in one way. Let me bring my superstar panel back in, Russell Quirke, Charlie Bentley Astor. And Russell, you can look at this at one way and say, oh, you know what, it's not that big a deal. But to me, it is, because it is totally indicative of the woke mind virus running through everything. And I don't want everyone to be nice all the time. Sometimes it's very important that we say tough things and that we give tough feedback.
Yeah, it's an indication of wokeism kind of at its extreme, but it also goes back to the point about freedom of speech. You know, Craig Revel-Horwood here is worried about what he might say. In other words, expressing an opinion, expressing his right to an opinion, because he's worried that he might say something offensive and either get cancelled or indeed, I suppose, you know, a la Alison Pearson, if he says something particularly cutting, he might end up with a knock on the door from Plod. Look, this is the BBC again, we should not forget. And the BBC, I think, have forgotten that what they're there to do is to entertain us. You know, there's supposed to be believe it or not, a light entertainment department within the BBC. Now, if you can't have someone like Craig or whoever having a bit of banter, taking the mickey a little bit and making the audience laugh, well then, frankly, Dan, what's the point of Strictly? Because I don't think people necessarily watch it for the grace and elegance of, you know, celebrities that have never danced before to dance. They do it because of the reaction. They do it because of the mistakes that are sometimes made and the laughter and the parody and the kind of the banter. So, you know, if we're going to sanitize television and indeed entertainment and comedy, well, I mean, what next? Banning Ricky Gervais? You know, telling us that we can't listen to comedians that might offend us? You know, comedy and banter are by their very nature offensive. And we've got to, and I don't hold out much hope for this, but we've got to stop worrying about everybody being offended, or indeed people worrying about it offending people. As we've all said, I'm sure, all three of us, many, many times before in public, no one has the right not to be offended. And frankly, particularly a celebrity on Strictly Come Dancing, who honestly has signed up for 100 grand, 500 grand, whatever they're getting paid, to be insulted by the likes of Revel-Horwood.
Exactly. And you know what? People are switching off. It is genuinely a case of go woke, go broke. The numbers are at record lows. And that isn't just because we're switching off the mainstream media altogether, by the way. It is because people don't want this saccharine, sweet type of television, which is now stuffed down our throat. I mean, Charlie Bentley Astor, I don't watch the BBC, really. The only one I still watch is The Apprentice, because Lord Alan Sugar is still allowed to be tough on people, and I like that as a result. But Charlie, it's a really serious point, isn't it, from Russell, that actually, given the madness that we're seeing with these non-hate crime incidents, and people literally getting visits from the police because they've told someone they have a bad haircut or that they smell of fish, it's not too hard to find a situation where Craig's comments in the past on the show could have actually prompted the police to get involved.
I know, and it just ruins television, because any story is about the stakes. To have a story arc, you need something to be at risk. And what is at risk when these people dance is their humility and their reputation. And that's the point. You know, like you said, we're not watching for the dancing. We could all pay to go and see a West End show if we wanted to see good dancing. It's about seeing amateurs attempt something and fail in the attempt, but without having the standards, there's nothing to aspire to. It's a game which gets ruined. It's the sports day where everybody wins. You know, if you know that everyone's going to get a 7, 8, 9, or 10, why are you going to bother watching?
But that is so BBC, though, isn't it? Everyone's a winner. We never want to be tough. And the problem is, I do think they have ruined the show somewhat because of their reaction to the Amanda Abbington, Giovanni Peniche scandal. Because what happened here is that he was effectively a bit of a tough teacher, right? He was pretty, you know, he wanted her to dance properly. And she's basically ruined his life. Now, I know there are two sides to every story. I actually like Amanda Abbington a lot. During the lockdowns, for example, she was really on the right side of history. She was one of the few people in showbiz who was a strong anti-lockdown campaigner, and I respect her for that. But Russell Quirke, unfortunately, she has dragged this guy, Giovanni, through the mud. And what did he do? What did he do? And so this is the problem now. If you know, it doesn't matter where you work, if you're talking about Strictly Come Dancing or if you're talking about working at your local Tesco's, you've got to be so paranoid when you're in the staff room, because your entire career can be ruined for something that in the past would have just been considered some playful banter.
And I think that this is also sending a message to people that whether they're a celebrity or somebody that's a bit attention seeking in a work environment, if you moan, complain, kick off, overreact, feign offence perhaps, it puts you in the spotlight for a little bit longer. It might even make you a bit of money, might make you famous where otherwise you might not have been. So I think, you know, we've got more of this, I'm afraid, to look forward to with, you know, Yvette Cooper saying that the whole kind of non-crime hate incident thing, they actually want to increase the scope of that, whereby, you know, in the future, we genuinely, I won't be able to compliment a female. My mates won't be able to give me any stick for, you know, my hair. I mean, honestly, we won't be able to do anything.
No, it's dystopian. It's dystopian. And also we know that these things are used by a particular sector of society, and it does tend to be the left, Charlie. I mean, are you nervous at all? Because obviously you are a punchy poster on X, a punchy user of social media. I think it's brilliant. But after what's happened to Alison Pearson, are you personally concerned at all?
I mean, at the moment, I'm going to bed with some warm pajamas on, and I'm getting dressed as soon as I wake up. And I'm not even joking. I'm.
No, I know lots of commentators have said the same thing.
Expecting to get a knock on the door at the moment, and I'm sort of confused why I haven't, other than what I'm saying is in fact true. And so they could try and drag me through a court and even put me away for a few months. But once the truth comes out about the things I'm talking about, then they're going to have to row back and pay me a large amount of compensation. So they've perhaps decided it's not worth it. But
now, I want to show you another example.
It's sinister.
You know, it is. It's totally sinister. I want to show you another example of this, which has come up today, actually. Narinder Kaur, friend of the show. I had her on The Clash last week talking about the whole criticism of Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Now, she has said today that the Met Police are in my home right now in response to these 2 tweets. And she's praised the police. She said, super efficient, thank you. Can anyone DM me the original accounts that started this? It's very important, thank you. And the tweets say, deport Narinder Kaur, and it's obviously made up. It's photoshopped to show 47 million signatures. And then the other makes a bit of a rude remark, which I'm not going to show you. But I responded to Narinder about this, saying it's not nice being trolled, Narinder. I've had it for years, as you know. But don't you understand this is a chronic waste of police time? We need these officers investigating stabbings and rape and stopping terror attacks, not patrolling tweets which hurt your feelings. And Russell Quirke, what really shocked me about this is that you cannot get a police officer to your house in London if you are the victim of a burglary or a mugging, for example. But they have raced around to Narinder Kaur because of a sort of satire tweet, which I don't see at all reaches the levels of a hate crime.
No, look, Narinder and I have lots of banter on X, on Twitter, lots and lots, and it's generally quite lighthearted. But of course, I do call her out and I do criticise her. Sometimes I decide to leave her alone where I think she's kind of flipped out just a little bit too much that day. And I think today is one of those days. I mean, given that Narinder Kaur is the person that launches attacks on people left, right and centre, including, of course, the Princess of Wales, calling her out for looking old, given that she's just recovered from cancer, and then actually made a victim of herself going on national television to try and get everybody to feel sorry for her, given that she'd said that most offensive and insulting thing. I mean, is there more an offensive thing that you can say to a woman than, God, don't you look old? I mean, very offensive. But of course, when it's turned around the other way, Narinder doesn't like it very much. But of course, the 2 tweets that she's talking about today, I nearly commented on them like you, and I thought, I'm not going to glorify her.
People always tell me off for this, but I'm always like, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Let's have the conversation. Let's have the debate. Some people criticize me for having her on the show, for example, to have it out with her in The Clash about those posts regarding Catherine, the Princess of Wales. But I don't believe in deplatforming people. I don't believe in banning people. What I do think, though, is that it's really, really worrying, Charlie, that people on the left clearly think they are totally protected from this form of lawfare because, as Russell points out, right, Narinder's posts can be utterly vile, can be filled with hate. Now, she would be horrified if the police turned up at her house. And it's just what we see with folk like John Sopel and Emily Maitlis and the people who run Have I Got News For You and Private Eye. They don't care about people on the right being hunted down the police because they know that it will never happen to them.
Well, exactly. And at the moment, they're in the advantage point in that the state is backing them up. And, the whole point of free speech is that the state might not always back you up. Things change, time moves on. And suddenly the people who run the establishment aren't your friends. And so that's why you don't persecute your political enemies.
Exactly. It's like when YouTube removed Novara Media. Now, I can't stand Novara Media. They have literally run lies about me for years. I think they are one of the most toxic and caustic forces in British media. However, I immediately stood up for them when they were booted off YouTube, immediately, because they have a right to spread their brand of journalism. We must stand up for free speech. And if Novara Media can be booted off, then I can be booted off too. So you've also got to think about it in that context. But look, do stand by Russell Quirke and Charlie Bentley Astor, because in just 1 minute, this has also exploded. Another major woke row. Now it's over Band-Aid, and it has seen Bob Geldof on one side, Ed Sheeran on the other side. previously you would have thought they were on the same side of the coin, wouldn't you? But not when it comes to Band-Aid, which now apparently is a very negative force. But first, I love the holidays. It's my favourite time of year in so many ways, but I can find it to be very demanding going to all the events, dinners, looking for gifts and planning the day itself. Every year I tend to burn out quicker than the last, and it might have something to do with getting older. But this year, I don't plan to burn out at all. Getting older is inevitable, but feeling older isn't. As we get older, our body's ability to create energy declines, but recent scientific discoveries have found we can actually increase our energy levels in our cells by taking something called NMN. Now, NMN has been shown to increase energy and endurance, activate our body's ability to burn fat, enhance mental function and health, improve blood pressure, regulate blood sugar levels, and support many other health markers. Finding high-quality pure NMN is hard, though, and that's why I use Verso. They conduct third-party testing for each batch produced to guarantee you get what you paid for. It contains the highest quality of NMN and other research-backed ingredients too that have been shown to increase energy levels and slow down aging. I've taken it for some time. I feel like a younger version of me, more energy, enhanced endurance, improved cognition, fat loss, better sleep, and when I do get a cold, which happens at this time of year, I recover so much faster. So click on the link in the description on YouTube and Rumble, or head on over to Verso, which is buy.ver.so, and use the coupon code Outspoken at checkout. I'm just going to repeat that address for you: www.buy.ver.so/outspoken. Use the coupon code Outspoken for that 15% discount. You can find the link as well in the show notes below this video or on screen now. But back to the show. Breaking right now, an extraordinary row has broken out between the Band-Aid creator Bob Geldof and one of Britain's top pop stars, Ed Sheeran, who has said that he is unhappy with his inclusion on the 40th anniversary edition of the charity single Do They Know It's Christmas. This is a really hard one for me to get my head around, to be honest. But it does show you that the woke mind virus now attacks anything. Even if you are a lefty raising money, not just raising a bit of money, by the way, raising tens of millions of pounds for Africa relief efforts. The song 10 years ago was for Ebola specifically. But these days, according to Ed Sheeran, it makes you a white saviour. It does show, by the way, how much the world has changed over the past 10 years. In my old life, which was in the entertainment industry, I was actually at the recording of Band-Aid 30, and it was brilliant. It was such a positive thing. And I can't see how anyone could say that it is a negative force for the world. But this has mainly been sparked by a rapper called Fuse ODG, who Ed Sheeran cited in his decision to turn on Band-Aid and launch this public response. Here is Fuse explaining why he feels this way in an interview with Nick Ferrari on LBC.
What should the future of Band-Aid be now?
I think he needs to, it's been 40 years.
Yeah.
Right?
40 years on the 25th.
For any business person, after 40 years, you have, and if you're not seeing results, because I haven't seen any results, if I'm being honest, like, he needs to relook at the model.
You don't think it's done good?
I think it's done more bad than good.
Band-Aid has done more bad than good,
More bad than good, because
it's raised tens of millions of pounds.
And it's also cost us in trillions.
How's it cost you in trillions?
So, okay, I'll give
it cost Africa in
I'll
trillions?
give one example.
Please, yeah.
I'll give one example. Yeah. Because of the image, the negative images that's been portrayed of the continent, Africa is seen as a high-risk profile. And as a result of that, we get high interest rate on our sovereign debts. Right? It's costing us 3.2 billion every year.
Oh, please. Now, Ed Sheeran, in his statement, said my approval wasn't sought on this new Band-Aid 40 release, and had I had the chance, I would have respectfully declined the use of my vocals. A decade on, and my understanding of the narrative associated with this has changed, eloquently explained by Fuse ODG. This is just my personal stance. I'm hoping it's a forward-looking one. Love to all. But Bob Geldof, he ain't happy. He ain't happy at all. He's actually issued a challenge today via the mail to Ed Sheeran. to speak about this politely, but he earlier told the Sunday Times, this little pop song has kept millions of people alive. Why would Band-Aid scrap feeding thousands of children dependent on us for a meal? Why not keep doing that? Because of an abstract wealthy world argument, regardless of its legitimacy. No abstract theory, regardless of how sincerely held, should impede or distract from that hideous, concrete, real-world reality. Now, it's not often, actually, that I agree with Bob Geldof, but in this case, I really do. And I also agree with Tony Hadley. Now, Tony Hadley, do you remember him from Spandau Ballet fame? He was actually on the original 1984 version, and he's old school. He hasn't been infiltrated by the woke mind virus. And do you know what his response was to Ed Sheeran? He said, I think they should just shut up, to be honest. If you take that route, then nobody does anything to help anybody. It's just nonsense. Everybody's doing their bit to try and support various charities, and we were doing our bit innocently to support what was happening in Ethiopia. So, look, I don't agree with Bob Geldof on a lot. Let me bring my superstar panel back now. Charlie Bentley Astor, Russell Quirke. Russell, this just shows you, doesn't it? As a white person, what can you do? If you support Africa, you have a white savior complex. You shouldn't get involved. If you don't, you're a big time racist. This is so depressing to me.
Yeah, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. And as you say, it's not very often that any of us probably agree with Bob Geldof. But this Fuse ODG guy that seems to have this thing in his head that, you know, charity is a bad thing. I think he called it in one interview dehumanizing to be given giving money to Africa. And let's just be very, very clear about Africa. Africa is full of developing, not developed nations. Africa and all of its countries, obviously Africa being a continent, but most of the countries within Africa, financially, economically, are on their knees, either because they're badly run, predominantly by corrupt dictators, or because they're racked with drought, famine, and so on. So you would think actually that someone that comes from Ghana, which Fuse ODG apparently does, would actually be quite grateful. He's not showing much gratitude here, but Fuse and others are also the people, ironically, I suspect, that are pushing for, encouraging and supportive of slavery reparations. So it seems to me that slavery reparations are okay when they go that way, but when it's a different kind of money, which is charity, that it's not okay. One tranche of money is demeaning apparently and dehumanizing, but slavery reparations are somehow justified. I mean, this is absolute hypocritical, abject nonsense from people that clearly don't know what they're talking about. And I'm obviously the biggest advocate of freedom of speech, as we all are on this show right now. But Fuse ODG needs to wind his neck in. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
The thing is, he can say it, but we can very strongly disagree. And what I find so fascinating is that Nick Ferrari, who I like very much, a presenter on LBC, I watched the whole interview. He's too terrified because you get cancelled now if you challenge this sort of narrative. Fuse ODG was spouting absolute rubbish. Of course, Band-Aid hasn't cost... What's that? Sorry, Russell?
I'd love to interview Fuse ODG.
Me too. Me too. Go on this show. Charlie Bentley Astor, you're younger than us. Do you think there's any argument for this? Because it often does, it feels like there's a bit of a generational divide here. The young pop stars are very anti-Band-Aid now. The older ones think it was a good thing.
Yeah, the young ones don't think it's a good thing because they weren't there. My generation in particular has never known real hardship. We've never been, we weren't around in the 70s and 80s, and most of us not in the 90s either. And so I actually haven't seen anything. I mean, we used to have a lot of poverty in this country, in the extreme edges of it, but we just don't see it anymore in the same way. And these young people just are being taught that regardless of your sort of intellectual credentials, if you have a certain skin tone, you are the ultimate authority for all Black people if you are the one Black person speaking in the room. And it's so insidious because you can't critique. And of course, when Ed Sheeran repeats what this rapper says, he's not had a single independent thought in making that declaration. Kudos to Geldof, because actually that was a very articulate statement, and it speaks to someone who's go on.
No, sorry, he wants to have the discussion. He's sort of doing that thing of, well, this is good because we're having the discussion about it. Whereas I actually just feel sorry for Geldof on this front. I really do. And, you know, also, Russell, I feel sorry for white people who try and support charitable causes now, because it's very risky if you're doing anything in a country that is non-white. And it's just going to put people off getting involved at all because you're immediately cancelled and called a white saviour.
Well, I mean, yes, I suppose, but let's just put this into context. You know, Ed Sheeran and Fuse ODG are not the oracle. You know, they are not carte blanche, slam dunk, the authority on whether we in this country think that we should be donating to Band-Aid or Oxfam or, you know, or other similar organisations. I mean, the fact that they want to politicise this and on the one hand demand money, as I say, through slavery reparations, but on the other hand, not demand or not have or countenance another kind of money. I mean, it's just ludicrous. It's just nonsense. The other thing I don't understand, though, Dan, is that this Band-Aid 40. I mean, first of all, it's not a new song, by the way. So this Band-Aid 40 release is a mashup of the songs that were released back in 89 and then, you know, 84, 89 and onwards. So not much effort's been put into this. There's no new artist, there's no new singing on it. But also in an age of streaming, someone needs to explain to me how, when this goes out on Spotify, how any money is made from it. Because in the old days, you'd make money from it.
Well, yeah, no, it's, I mean, yeah, you make a much smaller amount of money. But the thing is, because Band-Aid is part of the Christmas compilations, I know quite a lot about this because of my old life. Do you know these Christmas songs make so much money because from this time of year to December 25th, basically all of the streaming is Christmas songs. That's where a lot of artists now, so you'll see a lot of artists release a Christmas song because it's their ticket to wealth. I mean, Mariah Carey could have retired in 1991 after the release of All I Want for Christmas Is You because she just makes so much money from the streaming. So people will still be streaming the Band-Aid songs and all the versions will still be making money. I mean, would Fuse ODG say, take it off the streaming services? That's what's so extraordinary about this. I presume he would. And the reason, Russell, and I think this is so sad, the reason that there is no 40th anniversary version, because there was the 30th, there was the 20th, is because no artists would want to take part today because none of them want to risk their reputation. Sad, but true.
Very sad indeed. How pathetic.
Yeah, it is pathetic. It is pathetic. But you two are not pathetic. It's been so brilliant to have your company today on the Superstar panel. Charlie Bentley Astor, first time here on Outspoken, but you can follow her and her original journalism on Substack. And Russell Quirke is the host of Straight Talk on his own YouTube channel. So brilliant to have you both here today.
Thanks.
But don't go anywhere because coming up in the Uncancelled After Show, while the royal family have banned Meghan Markle from their Christmas celebrations. In fact, there is so much going on in the world of the royal family today, you do not want to miss our royal mastermind, Angela Levin. Now, you know, it's very important to me that we have a safe space not patrolled by big tech where censorship and control runs deep. So that's why our membership section for Outspoken is hosted on Substack. You can visit right now, www.outspoken.live. See that box there? You just have to enter your email address to subscribe. If you take the paid membership option, you get half an hour of the extra content every day, including the full access to my archive, my exclusive columns, the ability to chat to me one-to-one. Substack is such an exciting platform. And the great thing is it is all focused on free speech. Now, just yesterday, we launched our Black Friday sale. It is our biggest ever discount for Outspoken, 30% off. And genuinely, those who sign up, it means the world to me because you can imagine I'm very passionate about doing this independently. I have no big investors. I have no one pulling my strings. I am only funded by my audience. And all of that funding is pumped back into this show and the production of this show. So under this Black Friday sale, you can subscribe from just £3.50 plus VAT a month. I know how tough times are, but if you are able to do it, it means the world to me. But even if you can't, please do subscribe, because it means we can keep that communication going, and you still get access to a lot. So at this stage, we come off YouTube, we come off Rumble, we move to Substack to continue the conversation in the uncancelled after show. Let me just repeat the address for you if you don't mind, www.outspoken.live. We are back live tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Have a very big show for you planned. Hit subscribe right now if you're watching on YouTube and Rumble too. And most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you. We'll see you on the after show with Angela Levin, I hope on Substack in just one moment.